Perception is very different than sensation, at least so they tell us. Because in perception, we have the operation of our intelligence operating on patterns, in some cases making things up. Have a look.
Just look at that vase. Stare at it for a while. Do you see the two faces looking at each other, nose to nose? The presumption there is the background is white and the faces are orange. Then it flips and it becomes a yellowish vase on an orange background. Then it flips again. Who's doing this flipping? What's going on here? How can you not see the triangle, the one with its point down that looks like it's made out of solid white material? But there is no triangle. It's just spaces left from other shapes that create really the illusion of a triangle.
These two figures and a bunch of others in your textbook, some of which are called illusions, do show that we're doing something with the information that we've received. But the blend between how we process sensation and when we do more complicated processing to get to perception is a little bit ambiguous, at least to me. It seems like we have a lot of intelligence operating here. For example, many of us would not recognize the triangle itself and the recognition of a triangle as a perception, except in the case I showed where it's made up of missing spaces. But yet, in our history as a species, there was a time when cataracts were removed for the first time, and people who had adult language and tactile sensations could see a triangle versus a square. And in order to understand which one it was, they had to count the points. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's a square. And they could also then disambiguate it if you rotated it a little bit. But then later on, that information chunked, and they just recognized it as a triangle. Apparently, at this time, they didn't have much problem recognizing things sitting on other things, foreground versus background. So it does seem that there is some intelligence built into the senses maybe automatically, and others that you develop possibly very early in life. But when that stops being sensation and perception starts, is an interesting point. Let's take this concept of intelligence operating in perception to its logical conclusion, perhaps. So, for example, remember in the social psychology lectures we talked about the implicit bias test? Go back on it and do the test, or look it up on Google and do it that way. Here, the assertion is that you carry with you certain biases about race, let's say black versus white, which goes along with the perception of the black face. Now, it's not a matter of recognizing the face, but it's something that you have learned to associate with that. These implicit biases seem to occur everywhere, and some of them are very helpful. We have an implicit bias, as I said in the lecture, that the next step on the sidewalk will lead a firm ground for us to step on and not give way. And so we don't have to constantly worry about this as we trudge down the sidewalks. That seems innocuous. The implicit bias test seems to reveal something that's much more sinister. The question for us again is, where does this intelligence come from as we move from sensation to perception all the way out to things like implicit bias? The brain seems intelligent everywhere in the sense that it learns everywhere. So I think that this is really a matter of degree.